Okay, let's go to our third and final episode for this week. Hopefully more later this month. So, Carlias, before we talk about liberal progressive opposition or quote unquote whatever is left of the opposition, there's the Binay model, right? I mean, for a while, the Binay model looked like totally undefeatable. Remember yung ganito kami sa Makati, di ba? Bentang-benta.
Dito sa Makati.
Ganito kami sa Makati, the implication is the rest of the country will be like that if we take over. And with the success of Nancy Binay, etc., I mean, it can tell you that it had a national appeal, no? Had, you know, circumstances aligned for Vice President Binay back in 2016. But anyway, my argument here is the Binay experience is interesting, right? Because even some leftist people I saw argued that Binay came closest to creating a welfare state model in the Philippines. Now, obviously, Makati is a cash cow in terms of the CBD and all of that. But still, in fairness to Binay, no, he came quite close to not only performative populism, which we saw with Digong and ERAP and all of that, but actually building a semi-modern welfare. I used to live in both Makati and also in the Ayala area. So I was in different sides, although, you know, less non-privileged, underprivileged. But anyway, so I have an idea because I talk to people around, especially people from more underprivileged background, and yung libreng cake, libreng ganito, ganyan. Now, yeah, obviously, we know about all the corruption allegations and more than allegations in some cases, perhaps. But it's an interesting model, right? I mean, and probably, or parang nasayangan ba tayo? Sana, you know what I'm saying? Like with some tweak, perhaps the Binay model could have been because Bina is not for EJK, di ba? Naalala ko, Ronald, nung panon ni Digong, nung kakapanalo ng Digong, pauwi ako from Lasal noon, nagtuturo ako sa Lasal. And then there was this election tarp na nakalagay, kay Binay may buhay. No? And then suddenly under Duterte, I read it as, kay Binay may buhay. Di ba? Like, you could have, I mean, for all our reservations with Binay, he would not have been the AGK guy. He would not have been the all-out pro-China guy. You know, like, definitely a lot of disasters we saw would not have been there. And Binay had the populist appeal. And he would have easily defeated all of these other guys had it not been for, of course, you know, the Inquirer, expose, and all of that in 2015 and so on and so forth. And yung disastrous performance na during the debate. Sana hindi na lang siya pumunta sa debate, nag-junior effect na lang siya. I don't know. What is your understanding of the Binay experiment today in 2023? Because I'm sure if we talked 6-7 years ago, medyo iba yung sasabihin natin, no? But today, having experienced the whole Duterte, now second year of BBM, all of that, do you think the Binay one, sayang? Sana medyo ganun-ganun, pwede pa sana? Or maybe a revitalized version of the Binay model? Let's say Nancy Binay goes back, becomes the mayor, does it well. Maybe that could be the future? Because otherwise, mukhang tulfo ang other alternative natin dito, di ba? And people are also debating about that, di ba? Before we go to the opposition, I want to talk about the Binay model first. So
ang maganda dun sa Binay model, no? Paano hindi naman talaga siya model eh. Pero at least yung Binay experience, no? Dito sa Makati ay na-strengthen yung value ng local government. Na bago tayo mag-elect sa national, maganda na test natin sa local. Halimbawa, si Digong, alam mo na yung kanyang style of leadership sa Davao will be his style of leadership sa national kung magiging presidente siya. Alam mo na meron ng mga DDS, meron ng chismis about Davao Death Squad sa Davao. Kaya yung mga nagsasabi na okay si Digong, no? Medyo nag-deteriorate lang nung naging presidente, hindi totoo yun. Hindi naman nagbago si Digong eh. Ganun na siya nung mayor, ganun na siya nung naging presidente. Kaya maganda na halimbawa, nung mayor si Binay, wala naman talagang Makati Death Squad. Wala namang DDS sa Makati. So makikita mo na kung siya ay naging presidente, malamang, hindi naman mangyayari yung tokhang. Malamang hindi naman mangyayari yung libo-libong EJK, no? Kaya makikita. Yun yung value na nasusubukan on the local level, no? Pero yung halimbawa yung sinasabi mo na baka yung closest si Binay sa welfare state on the local level, hindi ako kumbinsido diyan. Dahil
Yung mga ghost
Nag-organize
employee,
ako
yung
sa
mga
Makati
ganun,
eh. Nag-organize ako ng urban poor, nag-organize ako ng trade unions. Na talagang malaki yung disparity pa rin talaga sa mahirap at mayaman. Yung mga mahihirap is basically busog sa dole out. Pero yung kanilang standard of living, yung kanilang social protection, hindi naman nagbago significantly, no? Maliban doon sa mga magagandang bahagi ng Makati, no, na merong middle class, merong mga upper class, may mga business class, yun yung nakikita sa Makati. Kaya akala mo it's a modern city. Pero pag pumunta ka doon sa mga periphery ng Makati, mga squatters pa rin yun nandun eh. And they have been squatters for generations. Hindi naman nagbago yung kanilang kalagayan. Kaya hindi ako kumbinsido dun sa welfareist framework ng Makati.
Not
Nung
even the
panahon ni Binay.
hospital, not even the University of Makati one. I mean, I get what you're saying. Ang argument mo
Yeah.
essentially is it was not truly empowering or a capacitating model. It was more of like, just, keeping people afloat and happy. Like it was not really to give you the social mobility to move up. It was more like just giving you the bare minimum. Anyways, ang laki naman yung tax base. I mean, yung tax base ng Makati kasing laki ng buong QC, which has 6-7 times more population. So that gives you an idea of how much. I get what you're saying. But nevertheless, right? I mean, he at least had level 1, let's say. Don't you think there was, kasi the University of Makati model was not too bad. The hospital system, let's just call it taxing light, if I can put it that way. There was a kind of a micro taxing thing going on there, right? I mean, I don't know.
Well, sinagot mo rin, Richard, yung tanong mo dahil it's the financial capital of the country. Diba? Makati is the financial capital. So, yung surplus niyan ay mas malaki kaysa sa ibang mga cities. Kaya meron silang disposable funds para idagdag dun sa dole out na ibinibigay ng ibang cities. No, mas malaki yung margin na ibibigay nila. But still, no, kung titingnan mo yung standard of living, hindi naman tumaas eh. No, hindi naman tumaas. Of course, kinakailangan pa natin pag-aralang maigi, no? Sa akin kasi anecdotal eh. Dahil yung karanasan ko sa mga squatters area sa Makati, yung karanasan ko sa mga trade unions, yun yung pinagbabatayan ko. Na hindi naman nag-improve ang kanila. Yung mga senior libre yan yung mga nauna eh, na libre sa sine, libre yung cake pag birthday, no? Merong mga bonus pag umabot ng particular age, no? Etc. Tapos mas binabawasan yung binabayad sa hospital, bagamat substantially, no, ay napakamahal pa rin talaga ng mga hospital sa Makati. So kumbaga yung margin nila kumpara sa ibang cities ay mas may dagdag. Pero dahil nga it's the financial capital of the country, kaya may dagdag, no? Yun yung kaya taxing kasi medyo na improve na ng konti yung rural sector eh. Hindi lang yung city eh. 'Di ba? Hindi lang yung syudad na pinanggalingan niya. Malaki yung kanyang support sa rural dahil meron siyang ginawa for the rural sector. Bagamat hindi pa rin talaga dramatic, at least meron siyang nagawa. Sa Makati, even Makati, the gap between the rich and the poor ay malaki pa rin, no? At hindi ako nakakita ng something significant beyond additional dole outs. Beyond, no? Tanggap ko na mas marami yung dole out kumpara halimbawa sa Caloocan or even Manila, di ba? Pero dahil nga mas mataas yung kanilang surplus kumpara sa ibang mga bansa, exactly because it's the financial capital of the country. Ngayon, ang merong ganyang capacity is Taguig. Diba? Ngayon, yun yung...
Are they doing that? Or do you think they will do even the Binay minimum? If I can put it that way, the Binay minimum. Yeah.
Yes, no? Yan yung... pero hindi ko rin sasabihin na welfareist na yung Taguig. No? At best. No?
So your argument, Ronald, is that it doesn't even meet the minimum threshold. Okay.
Yes.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just throwing out the point for discussion here. Let me put it another way, no? What if that was the version 1.0, the very raw, let's say, skeletal model? What if the next generation, let's say, if Nancy Bina would be the next mayor, don't you think they could have scaled it upgraded it 2.0, like kind of a much more capacitating. Kasi ang argument mo is it was not welfare state because it was more of dole outs that just created dependency, cycle of dependency. It was not really upward mobility, empowerment kind of welfare state, right? But don't you, again, this is, I know, very speculative, but in an alternative universe, don't you think that could have been the next step? Let's say Binay became the president in 2016, and then I don't know, another Binay was in charge of Makati. Don't you think at some point they'll be so comfortable, they will level it up, that this is, because remember, I mean, Ronald, it's not like yung mga welfare states sa Europe or US or even US came out of nowhere, right? They went through the Trapo process and then they leveled up. There was more mobilization. So it created this back and forth cycle, diba? Again, I'm just saying, granted all of your criticism, my point was, had it been given one more generation of chance, maybe that could have been a much more advanced threshold welfare threshold meeting model. Or do you think I'm just being wishful thinking talaga dear?
Well, maganda, Richard, na magkaroon tayo ng empirical data. Halimbawa, saan ang galing? Ano yung naging improvements? No? Yun yung una. No? Para meron tayong baseline data. No? Ikalawa ay bukas naman ako na dahil Binay ka, hindi naman ibig sabihin na yung errors na iyong tatay ay uulitin mo. Pwede namang may skill set ka na, meron ka ng learning curve para iwasan yung mga pagkakamali and become more modernizing. No?
Junior versus senior, right? I mean,
halimbawa, kung ma-approximate mo yung isang Vico Soto sa Makati, di ba? Yan yung part. So medyo baka dumikit ka ng konti into a more welfareist na system on a local level. Baka, no? Pero ayun nga, una kong gustong tignan ay yung data, no? Para meron akong scientific basis na merong improvement sa mga economic fundamentals in terms of standards of living, no?
Bigla ganyan ka na. Pag iba pwede pag ito, I need a longitudinal study. Ganyan ka na, Ronald. Next level.
Yung isa ay sa akin, mahalaga pa rin talaga yung corruption eh. Halimbawa, nung investigation about Vice President Binay, di ba? Grabe yung overpricing ng mga kama sa Makati Hospital, di ba? Yung talagang sobrang laki ng overpricing, no? Isang nga dapat kong tanungin ay ano na nangyari doon sa mga kaso na nangyari diyan, no? Yung parking building, no, na overpriced, etc., no? Paano bahagi pa rin ng welfare, no? Kahit merong certain margin of corruption, dapat drastically mabawasan 'yan. Dahil diyan yung pupunta sa pondo ng welfare, eh. 'Di ba? Pupunta rin 'yan diyan eh. Madadagdagan yung pondo mo kung sabi nga sa Singapore, at least make corruption predictable. Diba? para may factor in
corruption,
no?
Efficient corruption, I think that's the term.
In a cynical way, no?
Again, Ronald, I hope you see where I'm coming from, because as I said, if we had this conversation 6-7 years ago, I would have been probably even more critical than you, considering I lived also in Makati. Now, hindi ko na bisita yung mga communities that you went to, but there are people that we saw na they come from, so my point, Ronald, is, again, maybe I'm reading too much into things, but like, who would have thought Nancy Binay will turn out as one of the more independent-minded, sometimes even progressive sounding senators? So again, you can accuse me of wishful thinking, but kasi for me, I believe in redemptive politics. Like, look at how Trapo Ninoy was when he was young, and then look at how he turned out later on. I'm not saying everyone's going to be like that. I'm just saying, bukas ako sa idea ng improvement. That's why with Junior, I was, cautiously optimistic he's not going to be tatay style foreign policy and his dad style, dictatorial, because I would, I'm not saying he's progressive, but I was open to the idea of some tweak and improvements, 2.0 kind of situation, right? So I get exactly all of your criticism. It's just that after everything we experienced in the past 6-7 years, after seeing the Nancy Binay, let's say rebranding, but more than rebranding, I mean, in fairness, her voting record, her stance during some very crucial time, including 2019. I don't know, maybe suddenly I became more cautiously optimistic about leveling up, ChatGPT 3, ChatGPT 4, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know, medyo bukas ako doon. Like, the same with AI. Like, just because palpak siya ngayon, I don't believe the next generation will be bad. It can improve. So, I don't know. I believe in iterative improvement, if I can put it that way.
Bukas din ako, Richard. Kaya nga sinasabi ko, halimbawa kung merong Binay na magiging at least malapit-lapit sa Biko model, no? May sariling uh, skill set, natuto sa karanasan, iniiwasan yung mga errors ng kanyang mga magulang, no, etc. etc. Definitely, yun nga yung sinasabi ko kanina, no? That's a possibility. Pero kinakailangan ko lang makita na nababawasan naman yung squatter sa Makati, no? Nababawasan naman yung mga barado na drainage, no? Pag pumunta ka doon sa gilid ng Makati, nako, Richard, napakabaho, no? Dahil napakaraming basura, napakaraming barado na drainage. So, yung minimum na yan, no? Paano ka pa mag-a-aspire sa
Doon, di ba,
welfare?
si Isko, I think that's where Isko deserves some credit. He only had one term in Manila, quite a poor city compared to Makati. Pero tignan mo yung condominium projects. I mean, of course, we can have many criticism about Isko and all. But in fairness to the guy, right? The socialized housing, he had some sort of vision about it. I don't know.
Kaya nga sayang, Richard,
Kasi
kung nagkaroon siya ng tatlong term, who knows?
Exactly.
No?
Or the resources of Makati.
Baka siya yung man to beat sa 2028, di ba? Pero hindi pa tapos yung kanyang first term, tumakbo na siya. So, yun yung what might have been, di ba?
Medyo nag-grace po siya. Yeah, nag-grace po siya doon.
Kaya ang sinasabi ko lang, Richard, parang gawa tayo ng measurements, no? At bumaba tayo sa lugar para makita natin. Sa akin, anecdotal no? Ito yung nakikita ko, ito yung aking karanasan, no? Ito rin yung hahanapin ko para at least ma-approximate yung pinag-uusapan natin na a local welfare system. Hindi lang yung libreng cake pag birthday mo, hindi lang yung libreng sine para sa mga senior, no? Etc. No? Hindi lang yung libre na delata at saka instant mommy, no? Hindi yan yung ibig ko sabihin ng welfare. No? Ibig kong sabihin ng welfare is something more emancipatory at saka more sustained, no? More sustained.
Right. Capacitating, no? I mean, for me, you're absolutely right. It has to be evidence-based and it has to be comparative, no? Siguro compared sa Thailand, compared sa, I don't know, Colombia, with Pedro Gustavo, like we could compare with other developing countries na similar levels of per capita income and their welfare models, how effective they work. Kasi dun sa Pantawid Pamilya, may comparison na tayo, no? Yung Bolsa Familia sa Brazil, ganon. That's not really a welfare state. That's more like, semi-stopgap measure, right? It's not blown welfare state. So I think we can do the same thing, no? Comparative study in terms of, could the Philippines have gone at least the taxing level of Thailand? Because we can see the improvement in Thailand. You go to the rural area, ang ganda ng asphalt, mas maganda pa sa BGC. I'm exaggerating, but like the rural area in Thailand is very well developed. Tapos yung system, yung ilan ba, 10 baht, 3 baht, so like, di ba? I mean, and Thailand did that nung time na their per capita was a bit lower than us today, right? Their per capita back then was 3,500 siguro, 3,000. Ngayon kasi 8,000 na, medyo mayaman ng Bangkok compared to us. I mean Thailand. So I completely agree with you. I think a comparative study would have been very, very interesting. And yeah, both of us agree. I think Isko could have become that guy, especially if he had resources of Makati and he had more than one term. But ibang usapan na we can talk about Isko or siguro si Isko na lang kausapin natin in interview about this. Now, let's close this episode because I think the Binay episode was very interesting in itself. Let's go to the last episode. Let's keep it short. Pag-usapan naman.
Last word lang, Chris.
Yes, please go ahead.
Huwag natin kalimutan yung political organization. No? Kung magkakaroon ka ng modern, reform-oriented leaders, no, na makaka-create o makaka-approximate ng isang welfare, a real welfare system on the local level, kailangan ay rigorous din, dapat ay very strong din yung kanyang political organization. Kung hindi, magkakaroon tayo ng katulad ng kaibigan ko na si Governor Kakabag-Aw. Ang ganda nung nagawa sa probinsya, no? Pero isang bagyo lang, gumuho yung kanyang political infrastructure. Gumuho yung kanyang nagawa ng magaganda doon sa probinsya, sa Dinagat. So, kailangan huwag din natin kalimutan na dapat yung manifestation niyan is also in the political organization, no? In the political organization. Halimbawa, si Lula, nakulong siya, di ba? Nakulong siya na matagal, no?
Pwede natin lagay sa next episode because I think this is a perfect.
Okay.
Stop it there. Perfect. Thank you so much. Pansin mo, tina-transition ko. I mean, I'm an author, so every time you go to a chapter,
yes.
this is the perfect transition. Thank you
Ikaw
so much.
Kasi ina-excite mo ko eh. So minsan I get
Ay,
carried
na,
away.
kaya,
No?
like, ito na, Ronald, this is the part na magta-transition na tayo, okay? Alright. Masasanay ka, don't worry about it. People don't appreciate it kasi akala nila na I'm just interjecting. They don't understand. May fina-follow po akong flow eh. Kasi kung walang flow, kung saan mapunta ang usapan, especially kung madaldal yung guest ko, katulad mo, di ba? Kung saan mapunta ang
lalo,
usapan, di ba?
lalo na kung tatlo tayo rito ni Leloy.
Oh, isa pa, we have to do something. And alam mo na yung pag-usapan natin, which I think we'll have a glimpse of that in our next episode. Maraming salamat, Secretary Liamas.
Maraming salamat.